Welcome everybody to our supportive information session on stress management. My name is Rebecca and I'm an addiction and mental health counselor with Addiction Services of Thames Valley. A couple things to get us started. Yes, we are still open during the COVID-19 pandemic. For services, feel free to call us anytime Monday to Friday, 10 to 3, for services in Elgin, Oxford, Middlesex County, as well as London. So our number here is 519-673-3242 for more information and to get connected to our intake line. Feel free to call extension 222. If you are a current client or are looking for intake support, extension 284. If you are a family member or a loved one or are looking for intake support, feel free to reach out, extension 221. If you are looking for withdrawal support, extension 248. And if you would like to contact our RAM clinic or Rapid Access to Addiction Medication clinic, extension 281. For mental health and/or addiction information, support, and crisis services, feel free to contact Reach Out Crisis Services at 1-866-933-2023, or you can chat with them on the web at reachout247.ca. If you need someone to talk to or are feeling stressed, overwhelmed, or lonely, feel free to reach out to the CMHA support line at 519-601-8055. Some tips to protect your health during the COVID-19 pandemic, keeping in mind that this is a new illness that affects your lungs and airways. It is caused by a virus called coronavirus. Practicing good hygiene is the best way to protect yourself against the novel coronavirus and other illnesses in this cold and flu season. So as you've been hearing lots about, washing your hands with soap and water at least 20 seconds, or using hand sanitizer if your hands are not covered in dirt, minimizing close contact with other people, practicing social distancing where you are staying about 2 meters or 6 feet away from other people, as well as staying home if you are sick with symptoms of the COVID-19 virus, such as fever, cough, difficulty breathing, and staying 6 feet away or 2 meters away from other folks in your house. Another tool you might find helpful is the self-assessment that was released by the Canadian government, where you can find out whether your symptoms are indicating further treatment for COVID-19 at the link provided. Okay. So if you have ever attended any of our SISs before, you'll know that we always start out with a bit of a grounding exercise. It's a great way to help calm your mind and relax your body so that you can focus on the material that is being shared rather than being distracted by some of the stressors that might be following you into this space. What I have for us today is something called progressive muscle relaxation. And this is actually a tool that you can use in your day-to-day life as a concrete strategy to manage stress. So I'll invite everybody to find a comfortable position in their chair, feet flat on the ground, hands in your lap. And if you're comfortable, you are welcome to close your eyes and listen along. So we're going to get started with a deep breath in and out. One more deep breath in and out. Shift your attention towards your feet. Scrunch up your feet, scrunch up your toes, tense them up, and hold that for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and release. Let the tension leave your feet. Move your attention upwards now to your calf muscles. Tense up those calf muscles, stretch them out, and hold that for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and relax. Feel the tension leave your calves. Moving your attention upwards now to your upper leg muscles. I'm going to get you to tense that up, hold that for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and relax. Taking a deep breath in and out. Continuing on now, bring your attention to your stomach muscles and tense up your stomach like you're about to do an abdominal crunch, and hold that for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and relax. Move your attention to your hands now and tense up your hands into fists, and tense up those arm muscles and hold for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and relax. Move your attention now to your shoulders. I'm going to have you scrunch up your shoulders all the way up to your head and hold that for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and relax. Notice the tension leaving your shoulders. One final stop. I'm going to have you focus on your facial muscles, and I'm going to have you scrunch up your face and scrunch up your eyes and hold that for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and relax your facial muscles without opening your eyes. Ending this exercise with a final deep breath in and out. And when you're ready, you're welcome to rejoin the space. This is a really great exercise when we talk about stress management, because it physically makes us notice the difference between a tensed muscle group and a relaxed state. And it is very difficult for us to feel the stress in our bodies at the same time as we are feeling relaxed. So it's a great way to take control of the physical symptoms of stress. It's also a great tool to elongate. We did a quick 1-minute exercise. However, you are welcome to go through more muscle groups and tense and hold for longer periods of time if you are finding that your mind is still not at ease after just a short bout. Okay, so as mentioned, today's topic is on stress management. We're going to start off by defining what exactly is stress. We're going to talk about the causes and symptoms of it. And finally, we're going to end with talking about healthy ways to cope with it. So stress can be defined as any circumstance where we feel threatened or are perceived to be threatened regarding our well-being, or we feel like our ability to cope with it will be taxed. This threat might be to our immediate physical safety, our long-range security, self-esteem, reputation, or peace of mind. Stress can be minor everyday experiences. It might be something like losing our keys or standing in a really long lineup at Tim Hortons. It can be a major life event like a loss or a divorce. It can be positive things like getting married or having kids or graduating. It can also lie into a social type of stressor, like some type of financial problem or having some conflict in our relationships. Physical stressors like aging, illness, poor nutrition, not getting enough sleep. Environmental stressors like noise, pollution, traffic, weather. And finally, it can also be caused by our own thoughts or cognitions, or the way we perceive the situation and our ability to cope with that. So situations are considered neutral in the sense that two different people will experience the same event differently. It's our thoughts about the situation that can determine how we see it. For example, many people find driving very stressful the first few times when you're out on the road. However, after practice and experience, you find that it's not nearly as stressful as it might have once been. Experiences, views, beliefs, our culture, they all influence how we think and understand stress. According to Lazarus and Folkman, stress does occur based on our views of the event. First, a primary appraisal or interpretation of an event will occur, where we will ask ourselves if we see the situation at hand as stressful, challenging, threatening to our well-being. If we do, then we'll go on to a secondary appraisal or interpretation of the event, where we'll ask ourselves, can I handle this? Do I have the resources available to me, the coping abilities, the skills to be able to deal with this? If no, or if we feel like we're going to be exhausted by that or taxed by that, then we will likely end up feeling very stressed. So to sum up, we have an event happen. We ask ourselves, is this stressful? We ask ourselves, can I handle this? And if no, or maybe, then that leads to stress. Not all stress is bad. Sometimes stress can be a great motivator to accomplish a task, such as working under a deadline at work or school. There is, as indicated on the graph, a kind of point where an opposite effect will happen, where stress can actually limit our ability to perform. This completely is dependent on how complex the situation is, how familiar we are with the task, as well as how we are thinking about or perceiving the task, as we talked about on the last slide. So there are many different signs that somebody might be experiencing stress. And these symptoms of stress are a really valuable tool to hone in on and pay attention to, because that is going to tell us that some type of action is going to be needed, that we need to read our bodies, read our minds, and that is kind of the warning sign that some type of healthy coping strategy needs to be prepared for. We can break the symptoms of stress down into 4 different categories, with one being cognitions, or our thoughts. These include noticing some memory problems. Maybe we're having trouble concentrating, we're not making the best decisions, we only are focusing on the negative, we have anxious or racing thoughts, and constantly worrying, just not able to shut that brain off. Emotional symptoms include depression, general unhappiness, anxiety, agitation, moodiness, irritability, anger, feeling overwhelmed, lonely, isolated, and other emotional and mental health problems. Physical signs include aches, pains, diarrhea, constipation, nausea, dizziness, issues with the digestive tract, chest pain, rapid heart rate, loss of sex drive, and frequent colds or flu. Behavioral indicators include eating more or less, sleeping too much or too little, withdrawing from other people, putting off important tasks, using alcohol, cigarettes, drugs to relax, and then finally nervous habits, like maybe we're biting our nails or pacing around the house. It is really important to keep in mind, as mentioned, that these are indicators that we are getting ready to, we need to make some type of intervention, that there is some type of action that needs to be taken to reduce the amount of stress that we're experiencing. And we experience those specific types of stress symptoms because of something called fight or flight response. This is an evolutionary reason for why our bodies respond the way that they do. Throughout our history, we were, when we were presented with some type of threat, like a bear, a lion, a tiger, we had to jump into action and either fight it off, or we had to flee and get the heck out of there to keep ourselves safe and alive. So what happens now is that our bodies still respond to stress in that way. So our autonomic nervous system will start to send messages automatically when we are feeling stressed or threatened to our brain, to other parts of our body, to get ready for action and start to defend ourselves. So you might experience symptoms like increased heart rate, increased blood pressure, increased breathing, slowing of the digestive tract. And these are all just to get our body ready to act and put the energy where it needs to be to defend ourselves. But as I mentioned, because the threats that we are experiencing now are not lions, tigers, and bears, they are things like conflicts at work, they are relationship difficulties, financial difficulties. Our body still responds to stress in that way, where we're fighting or flighting. However, these complex problems do require more complex solutions than simply the evolutionary response. So we can break stress down into two types, with one being acute stress, which is where we might have a threatening event happen to us that is relatively short-lived and has a clear end point in sight. Things like maybe your home is threatened by a flood, or perhaps you are waiting to hear back about some medical tests. Another type of stress is called chronic stress. And this is where you might experience stress over a long period of time without really having an end in sight. Things like experiencing ongoing hostility from a boss at work, or maybe you are taking care of a sick family member, or what we're all experiencing right now is stress related to the COVID-19 pandemic. Chronic stress is also caused by a lot of our modern world problems, like technology. For example, we are 24/7 typically available by text, email, social media. That causes us to always be in the on position because we typically always have to engage in some capacity, right? Out of the two types, chronic stress does cause the most harm to our bodies because the stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline are not meant to be in our bloodstream for a long period of time. They really are meant to be these short bursts to get us in and to get us out of trouble, right? But when we experience chronic stress, it's working overtime. It's constantly in our bloodstream. And that can play a big impact into the way it affects our immune system, causing us to get sick more often. It can cause higher blood pressure, heart disease, diabetes, fatigue, depression, digestive problems, ulcers, and can also increase unhealthy ways of coping, like using more drugs or alcohol, which can cause their own health concerns. So, healthy ways to cope with stress. When we are active in our addiction, it's important to keep in mind that our brains are wired to respond to stress using substances. To reprogram our brain, we need to identify healthy coping options ahead of time so that in the stressful moment, we can pause, take a moment, and apply it. Because our stress response was wired into our brain long ago, however, it's important to be patient with ourselves and very persistent with developing a new way of responding to stress. But it does take some time. Coping in a healthy way can fall into three different categories, with the first one being appraisal-focused strategies, which focuses on challenging how we think about or interpret a problem. Problem-focused strategies, which focuses on actions that you can take to either resolve the problem or improve your situation. And finally, emotion-focused strategies, which focuses on managing our emotions about the problem so that it doesn't become so overwhelming for us to handle. When reviewing different coping strategies, it's really important to keep in mind that even the healthiest coping strategies are not going to work in some situations. Different events and problems call for different ways of handling it, and it does take time to retrain your brain to respond to stress, as we talked about before. So, encouraging you to keep an open mind, be patient with yourself, and try different strategies to find out which ones are going to work for you. So the very first category we have here is appraisal-focused coping. As you can see, Ellis's ABC's model of emotional reactions is a great way to understand how this works. The model is based on the idea that you feel the way you think. When an activating event occurs, for example, let's say that you get stood up on a date that you were really looking forward to, people will often recognize the emotional response that they are having, such as anger or sadness. Ellis says, though, it's not the event itself that causes that emotional response. It is our thoughts or belief system about the event that is making us feel the way that we do. For example, let's say that, again, you get stood up on the date and you think to yourself, well, this is just terrible. Now I'm going to have a boring weekend. I'll never find anybody. I'm going to be alone forever. Well, this is going to definitely cause you to feel some sadness and anger. If our thoughts are getting caught in these mind traps or these catastrophic thinking, then it can create unrealistic appraisals or interpretations of the event, leading some people to exaggerate just how bad the problem actually is. One way to change this is to learn to recognize that this is happening by carefully evaluating the type of talk and narratives that we are offering to ourselves, and then finding some way of either countering it or reprocessing it, or having kind of looking at a different way about the situation than the one that is so automatic and natural to us. Once we do that, then we can learn to counter these thoughts and come to sometimes a different conclusion and a different emotional outcome. So continuing with the stood up on a date example, if instead you think to yourself, well, this is unfortunate, but I can still have a good weekend, or you think to yourself, someday I'm going to find somebody that is mature enough to be with me and dependable enough to be with me, then your emotional response might still be a bit annoyed, maybe a bit subdued, but chances are you're going to still remain much more hopeful for the future, and therefore the intensity of the stress will be reduced. So as we talked about, asking yourself, what does your self-talk look like? What assumptions are you making? And then really challenging yourself to replace some of those irrational assumptions with more rational ideas. Other strategies include reframing how you see the event, including recognizing that things could be worse, which might help put the problem into perspective for you. Seeking out the positives of a situation can also help buffer some of the stress of the situation. A final point is that humor can be a really great strategy to help cope with stress, as it changes the way that we see a stressful situation, often putting a much less serious spin on it. Humor can also help elicit positive emotions like happiness and joy, and it can also lead to more positive social interactions. People like to be around funny people, so chances are you might have a better support system if humor is one of the coping strategies that you often turn to. One thing to keep in mind, however, is that humor should be directed outwards, or more of an observational type of humor, rather than self-directed or self-critical humor, as self-critical humor can actually lead to diminished self-esteem, and that ends up making stress more challenging to handle in the long run. Another type of coping strategy that we can focus on is problem-focused coping. So one way to do this is by building and applying our problem-solving skills. So here is a simple strategy that you can use if you are experiencing a big problem that you would like to tackle. Number one is clarify the problem. Oftentimes people describe the problem in vague emotions or generalities, like, I never have enough time for this, or I'm so nervous I can't concentrate, rather than the problem itself, such as, I have taken on way too much responsibility than I can reasonably fit on my plate. Step two, generate alternative courses of action. Many problems might not have a complete solution, but different actions can improve the situation even a bit. Sit down and make a list of different courses of action that you can take without criticizing or evaluating them. Just let the ideas flow. Step three, evaluate your alternatives and select a course of action. Ask yourself which ideas are realistic. what costs or risks are associated with each, and which outcome is most desirable to you or most important to you. Step 4, take action, but remain flexible. Avoid thinking of outcomes as a success or a failure. Just look for improvements of any kind. If a plan doesn't work, ask yourself if there might have been an unforeseen circumstance that you couldn't have known about. And remember that you can always learn from your mistakes and try again. For example, let's say that you wanted to start to work out more and you made this plan with yourself that you were going to go for a run and do some push-ups and sit-ups every morning for 5 days a week at 6 a.m. A month rolls by, and maybe you did do a couple days a week where you did do those push-ups and you did go for that run, and maybe you found that it wasn't 6 a.m. that was happening at, but maybe it was 4 o'clock after your partner got home and could take care of the kids. All of these things are not, these things are meant to be a lesson, right? And they're meant to really help us figure out what works and what doesn't work for us, rather than being able to predict the future and know exactly what the plan is going to look like. So if you are able to find any type of success, how can you build off of that? Another way to solve problems is maybe you are taking on too much responsibility. Maybe there can be some delegation that can happen at work, or maybe you can ask for some help from some family, friends, or neighbors. You can also focus on improving your time management skills. One way to do this is by keeping track of where your time goes by creating a written record of your activities. This will help you make informed decisions on where to reprioritize your time. Another great idea is to figure out what is most important to you in your life and what your lifetime goals are, so that you can prioritize fitting time into your schedule to deal with that. A final suggestion is to plan your activities using a schedule. In the short term, it will take some time, but long term, it will save you time. In addition to problem-focused coping and appraisal-focused coping, we can also use emotion-focused coping strategies. While learning new coping techniques, emotions can still be high around stressful situations. Other problems just might be too serious for us to reappraise or think differently about, or maybe there just is no solution that is available to us. In that situation, we do want to focus on managing the intensity of our emotions. One way to do this is to enhance our emotional intelligence. This is your ability to accurately perceive emotions in yourself and others and express your own emotions effectively. It's your ability to understand how emotions can influence our thoughts, actions, and how we cope with stress, and our ability to regulate our emotions by dampening negative ones and effectively using those positive ones. Another way to do this is to use healthy ways to release emotions welling up inside of us, such as talking to somebody about our stress or writing it down. This is important for your physical health because if emotions are being stored inside of us without an outlet, the accompanying physiological response can become problematic through things like higher blood pressure, increased feelings of stress. So again, it doesn't have to be a written journal. You can talk into the memo section on your phone, talk to yourself out loud, just find some way to externalize those thoughts. Managing anger through things like rational self-talk, reinterpreting an annoying event, or distracting yourself can also diminish feelings of stress. Intentionally forgiving yourself and others for a wrongdoing done against you, recognizing that all humans make mistakes and not to expect perfection from other people, can be helpful in releasing some of that anger and stress as well. Exercise, another great option. Great way to get out that frustration, get those endorphins going in your brain and distracting you from the stress. And meditation and relaxation techniques like the progressive muscle relaxation that we did at the start of today's video can also be a really great tool to help focus your mind in a non-analytical way. Some additional coping strategies to keep in mind are rather than letting interpersonal conflict fester, it's important to deal with it promptly and directly by setting appropriate boundaries and respecting yours and other people's thoughts and feelings. Keeping in mind that maybe when you are feeling very stressed and hot, it can be difficult to communicate in that moment. So recognizing it when we say immediately, it doesn't have to be now, just then and there, but setting up some time to talk to the person that you are having that conflict with, when both of your minds are cool enough to have a productive conversation, can be a great way to reduce stress. Planning social time with friends is also very valuable. And right now we are experiencing some challenges with that, with social distancing, but setting up those FaceTimes, Zoom, Hangouts, Google Hangouts, everything, using that technology to connect to people, calling people, just having some type of interaction with people that you enjoy can make a big difference. Fueling your body with 6 to 8 hours of sleep each night and a balanced diet, giving your brain the nutrition and food it needs in order to be making these sound decisions for problem solving and coping. Trying to focus your energy on things that are within your control and letting go of things that are outside of your control, even if you can just let it go for a moment. Planning a peaceful retreat. This one can be a bit difficult when we are social distancing, but even finding a time where you can be by yourself, or having some quiet time, being in nature, finding something to just disconnect can be very refreshing. And then finally, being prepared and planning ahead for known potential stressors. For example, if you, check the weather network before leaving your house, you'll know to bring an umbrella and just avoid putting yourself through that foreseeable stressor. So that is it for today's supportive information session on stress management. Again, keep in mind that when you are exploring new ways to cope with stress, it's important to keep an open mind, be patient with yourself, try different strategies so that you can find the best ones that fit you. Thank you, and I hope you all have a great day.